Hello, good evening and welcome to Vantage Point, where we're just over 2 months away from the crucial UN Human Rights Council sessions in Geneva. Dr. Dayan Jayatilleka, welcome back to Vantage Point. I'd like to start off by asking you, Dr. Jayatilleka, with just over 2 months to go for the UN Human Rights Council sessions in Geneva, the US has said that they will be moving a third resolution, they will be sponsoring a third resolution on Sri Lanka. And in the meantime, we've seen the foreign policy apparatus in Sri Lanka coming to life. Professor Peiris, the Minister of External Affairs, recently visited India, probably I suppose to have discussions with Mr. Khurshid, with the Indian External Affairs Minister, Minister Khurshid, and try and secure India's support this time around, something which is not possible last time. But we have been, he had been snubbed, to put it lightly. What is your take on India's stance this time around?
Well, good evening, Nadeem. Good evening to our viewers. Yes, the foreign policy apparatus, did you say? Well, I think our foreign policy apparatus is hydra-headed. It's not the kind of apparatus you have in other parts of the world. But yes, it looks like the foreign minister drew a blank in his efforts to secure support from his Indian counterpart. Now, this was surely to be expected. India voted with us in 2009, supported us in September 2011 in Geneva when Canada was striving to bring a resolution, cautioned us, and I'll tell you more later, that that support was not open-ended, that they were under a lot of pressure politically from within, voted against us in 2012 and against us again in 2013. So, when someone who voted for you votes against you, and then other countries in the region and the third world tend to look at how India is voting and either abstains or votes against us, then you have to put a lot of effort into getting the Indians back on board, especially when elections are due in April, May 2014. Now, obviously, we didn't do that, or we didn't do enough of that. Now, what should we have done? We did one thing right. We had the provincial council election in the north, but we had it too late. If we had had it earlier, not only would the far more cooperative and constructive Mr. Devananda be the chief minister, we would have also been able to retain the support of India in 2012 and 2013. But we didn't do that. Well, belatedly we had the election, which is a good thing. But if the government of Sri Lanka had moved forward with a structured dialogue mechanism, that was the Indian phrase, and had a political process with the TNA and the Northern Provincial Council, instead of abandoning the talks and insisting that the TNA join the Parliamentary Select Committee, then Delhi would have had something to say to Tamil Nadu, which is quite restive. Delhi could have said, look, we have this provincial council election and now there's a dialogue going on, so let's at least abstain, if not support Sri Lanka. Well, we didn't do that. And there's a price to pay. And this was easily foreseeable. The Indians had told us this as far back as 2011. I say this because I was one of them they told it to, but I was not the only one. In 2011,
you were mentioning that we were cautioned.
Yes, in late 2011, I think it was in September, at the UNESCO, there's the high-level segment of UNESCO, which is attended by ministers and high-level dignitaries. India is always represented by a very outstanding person, Dr. Karan Singh, who was close to the Nehru-Gandhi family, and is the son of the last Maharaja of Kashmir, the one who acceded to the Indian Union in 47. Dr. Karan Singh and the Sri Lankan Minister of Education, Mr. Bandula Gunawardena, had a meeting. Mr. Gunawardena wanted to thank him for some support that India had given, and of course, as our Ambassador Permanent Delegate, I was at the meeting. And Dr. Karan Singh told the minister, he said, Mr. Minister, we are under a lot of pressure from Amma. And he explained, Amma was the term they used for Jayalalitha. Delhi is under pressure, the Congress is under pressure. It will be very difficult for us to resist this. Your president is a friend of mine, we met in New York. Please remind him, please tell him to implement the 13th Amendment as promised to us, because then we will be able to stave off this pressure. It will be very difficult for us to continue to support you in a few months. Now, I joined the discussion and I said, of course, my support for devolution is well known, but it's not quite as simple as that, because the TNA has yet to agree that the 13th Amendment is the basis for a solution. And this is something India can do. India can make sure that the TNA stays within the framework of the implementation of the 13th Amendment. Now, that night at dinner, I told the minister, I said, look, you have to tell the president this, because there's a vote coming up in Geneva early in 2012. And these guys, this is a signal, they're not going to vote for us. You have to tell him that we have to implement devolution. Now, the strangest thing happened, Nadeem. Somewhere in 2012, the Minister of External Affairs, Professor Pires, came over to Paris, and we had arranged what turned out to be a very successful visit, including with the Foreign Minister of France. But he had with him a report, and the report was about me. And the report charged that, as the ambassador, I had taken India's side over Sri Lanka in this discussion with Karan Singh. So I said, may I see that? Then, he was a little reluctant, but he read it out, and Professor Pires, being a top academic, he himself said there's something wrong with this report, because it doesn't read right. And then...
Are you alleging that Minister Gunawardena had related events very differently when he returned?
Well, Nadeem, the report was in English. Minister Gunawardena is supposed to have handed it in. I rather doubt that he was the author. The report was entirely in English. Now, what the report did was, what Dr. Karan Singh said, as well as what I said, were both attributed to me, so it didn't flow. And Professor Pires, who's been correcting examination papers for a very long time, he knew that this wasn't flowing right. Now, what is important is this, and I took it up with the executive later when I met in April 2012. I said, we were given a signal that the Indians could no longer vote for us unless we came through. Instead of conveying that signal to you, that is to the president, it was turned into a report against your ambassador. I mean, what was more important? As a result, the leadership of the country didn't get the accurate report, which would have enabled us to take certain steps to keep the Indians on our side, or at least neutral. This is what is happening in the system. Now, Paris wasn't the only place that the Indians sent us this signal. In Geneva in September 2011, the ambassador, the permanent representative, Mr. Gopinathan, told the Sri Lankan delegation, which included the foreign minister, that yes, we are supporting you this time against the Canadian effort, but don't count on this next year. Unless you move, you must at least agree to blah blah blah.